Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to go over how to answer a short answer question, an SAQ. And I did make a video about this before, but I kind of briefly went over it. So I want to go over it in more detail, and I will do one with the stimulus. That means that is a primary or secondary source that is going to basically help you answer the short answer question. So if we look at this short answer question that we have here, we do have a passage that we have to read, and then this is our short answer question. So typically your short answer questions are going to have three parts that you have to answer using the ACE method. That's the best way to gain the points. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay. So it's saying here, instructions are use the passage below to answer all parts of the question that follows. So let's go ahead and read this passage. First, before I read it, I want to see where it's from. So I see that it is from Conrad of Megenberg, a German philosopher and theologian. That's like a person that studied religion, educated at the University of Paris, and his book is Concerning the Mortality in Germany, a book written in Latin, and it was in 1350. Okay, so this is a German person. He is an intellectual, as we can see. He's a philosopher and a theologian. He wrote a book and it's written in Latin. That's the primary language at the time. That's the language that everything is written in. And it is in 1350. So it's right around the time of our time period, 1200 to 1450. This is going to be during the Middle Ages. And since he is German, it's going to be in Europe. So it's the European Middle Ages. He's saying concerning the mortality in Germany. So he's talking about mortality means death in Germany around the time of the Middle Ages. So let's see what Mr. Conrad has to say. So he's saying, it does not seem to me that the Jewish people can be the cause of this general epidemic throughout the whole world as many suggest. My reasoning is as follows. So he's basically saying that lots of people are blaming the Jews for being the cause of a general epidemic throughout the world. Epidemic means like a spread of disease. And we're in the Middle Ages, 1350. We're talking about a disease that's spreading throughout the world. So that's going to refer to the bubonic plague or the Black Death. So he's talking about how a lot of people are blaming the Jews for being the cause of the spread of the Black Death. Oh wow, it's raining. He's saying, I don't think that, and this is why I think that. First, it is well known that in many places where the Jewish people dwelled, they died in droves from the exact same disease as the Christians. So where there are Jews, there are also Christians dying, and they're both dying from the same disease. If they really caused the epidemic, they would not have killed themselves and others of their faith. So if they were the cause of this, why would they target themselves as well? That doesn't make sense, and that's what he's saying here. Second, many people say that Jews poisoned the wells, causing the disease. So they thought that the disease came from the wells where people drink water, and they thought Jews poisoned them, and that's what's causing the disease. This also seems doubtful because after the wells full of polluted water had been purified, people still died in great numbers. So even after the wells had been cleaned, the water had been replaced, people are still dying. So the wells is probably not the origin of the disease. Further, in cities that use water only from great rivers like the Danube, the inhabitants have also died in large numbers. So even cities that don't use wells as their water source, they use rivers, people also died. So that doesn't explain their reasoning that Jews poisoned the wells. Moreover, even after all the Jews in many places had been killed and were completely driven out for nearly 2 years prior, the disease now strikes these same places just as powerfully as before. So even the places that had expelled the Jews because of these anti-Semitic sentiments, even those places, there are no Jews, like 0 Jews. But people are still dying, and they're dying at the same rate as before. So how are the Jews responsible if they're not even there? So this is what Mr. Conrad is saying. So let's look at what our SAQ is asking us to do. So it's asking us to describe the historical situation in which Conrad of Megenberg wrote his book. So historical situation is a fancy word for context. Context basically just means what's going on at the time that Mr. Conrad is writing his book. Okay, so we know that this is the Middle Ages. We know that a lot of people are dying of the Black Plague. So there's multiple answers to this question. You don't have to describe like everything that's happening. You can just describe a portion of what's happening. So some answers that you could put to this is we have European populations basically being decimated by the Black Death. That's a historical situation that's happening as he's writing his book. We also see an increase in trade along the Silk Road, and that's going to lead to a spread of disease, okay, because the Black Plague is going to travel through the Silk Road. So that can also be a historical situation. We also know that Europe is fragmented into feudal kingdoms during this time period. This is the Middle Ages, where Europe is experiencing feudalism. And we're also going to see the Black Death because it is hitting Europe so hard. We're going to see that cause and encourage the development of certain Christian religious movements that are going to go ahead and blame the Jews for the disease. So we're going to see multiple things happening. Now, you don't have to put all of this as your answer. Just pick one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the easiest one. I'm going to go ahead and write it here. So remember, we're answering this using the ACE method. So we can say basically repeating the question, answer the question, the historical situation in which Conrad of Megenberg wrote his book is, and then we're actually answering the question. I'm going to put is when Europe was being decimated, that means basically like destroyed. Well, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. When European populations, be more specific, were being decimated by the, we can say bubonic plague or Black Death. I'm going to put Black Death. So we're answering the question. Now let's go ahead and provide some evidence. So I'm going to say the Black Death or the bubonic plague originated in China and made its way to Europe through trade routes. And then I can explain this. This happened because we're going to say merchants and traders who had the disease traveled to trade with Asia and the Middle East. Okay, so this is basically the answer to this question. This is just part A. Describe the historical situation in which Conrad of Mecklenburg wrote his book. So we can say the historical situation in which Conrad of Mecklenburg wrote his book is when European populations were being decimated by the Black Death. The Black Death, or the bubonic plague, originated in China and made its way to Europe through trade routes. This happened because merchants and traders who had the disease traveled to trade with Asia and the Middle East and brought the disease back with them to Europe. And I added just a bit more detail there. So this would be the answer to this one. I'm just going to bold it so it's easier for you to see. So that's it right there. So let's go ahead and do the second one. Describe one argument that Conrad of Mecklenburg makes regarding the Jewish people and the spread of disease. So one argument. So he actually really divides his arguments really well. He says first and then he says second. So first he's arguing that in places where Jews dwelled, they also died from the same disease. Why would they kill themselves? And then he also says Jews poisoned the wells, but in places where the wells were purified, people still died, and places where people were getting their water from rivers, people still died. He also says in places where there are no Jews, people are still dying. So that supports his claim that Jews did not cause the disease. So we could put any one of these arguments. These are all his arguments. So I'm going to go ahead and put the first argument, that Jews also died from the disease, so they couldn't have been the cause. So let me go ahead and answer this question. We're going to directly just repeat the question. So one argument that Conrad of Mecklenburg makes regarding the Jewish people, and the spread of disease is that Jews were also dying in great numbers, or I'm going to say at the same rate Christians were. Okay, and then let me give some evidence. So I will paraphrase what he says. I can quote it, but I think I'd rather paraphrase it. So I'm going to say Conrad of Megenberg says, they died in droves from the exact same disease as the Christians. So I'm going to say Conrad of Megenberg states that Jews died in droves from the same disease as Christians. Okay, that's my evidence. And then we're going to say this happened because we're going to say the Black Death or the bubonic plague, whichever one you want to call it. They're kind of the same thing. Because the Black Death did not, I'm going to say because, I'm going to change it to disease does not discriminate, and we're going to say affects everyone. So that would be a good answer to that question. And actually, I'm going to change this to infects everyone. Awesome. Okay. And the third one says, describe one way in which the disease referred to in the passage influenced the development of urban areas in the period 1350 to 1450. So describe one way in which the Black Death, that's the disease referred to in the passage, how did the Black Death influence the development of urban areas in this time period? And that just means, how did the Black Death influence the development of cities? Urban areas is just cities in the period 1350 to 1450. So this is going to require some of that prior knowledge that you guys would have. It's not going to give you the answer in the passage. So this is going to require your knowledge. So one of the things that we know is that because of the disease of the Black Death, we're going to see urban populations, that means populations of cities, decrease because people are dying, right? Basically, that one's the easiest one. But we're also going to see a lot of commercial cities, cities that are centered in trade. We're going to see those cities basically be devastated by the Black Death because we're going to have so many people coming from different places trading that it's going to be an epicenter for disease. So we're going to see cities like Cairo, Alexandria, Genoa. They're going to be devastated by the Black Death. We're also going to see the bubonic plague devastate rural areas. That means the countryside. And the people that are in our countryside are mostly our serfs. Remember those peasants that are under the feudal system? And because it's devastating the countryside, we're going to see the serfs kind of flee the area. And remember, they're tied down to the land. So they technically can't do that. But there's disease and everyone's dying. So they're going to get out of there. And they're going to actually go into towns where they're going to obtain their freedom because they're not tied to the land anymore. And that eventually actually boosts urban populations. So in the long term, we're going to see, in the short term, we're seeing cities devastated, but in the long term, they actually bounce back. The population bounces back. But I'm actually going to go with the second reason that I pointed out. We're going to see major commercial cities get devastated. So let me go ahead and answer the question. And we're just acing it. We're rephrasing it first by answering the question. One way in which the disease referred referred to in the passage influenced the development of urban areas in the period 1350 to 1450 is, and we're going to put major commercial cities will be devastated. All right, I'm going to put that. I said I'm going to put that. Okay. Now let's give our evidence. So we're going to say major commercial cities like Cairo, Alexandria, and Genoa. And you don't have to give this many evidence. I'm just pointing it out. You can just give like one city as an example. So major cities like Cairo, Alexandria, and Genoa will experience population declines because of the spread of the Black Death. Now let's explain our evidence. This happened because cities like Cairo, I'm just going to put Cairo, were major trading hubs along major trading hubs where people from all over the world, actually I'm going to put Afro-Eurasia because that's a fancy word. People from all over Afro-Eurasia came to these commercial cities to trade and buy goods. Okay, so that would be a good answer to that. So I know this seems a little daunting to have to do all of this for one SAQ because this is just one and it just has 3 parts. But you can do it, just use the ACE method, answer the question, cite specific evidence, and then explain the evidence. So that would be how you do that. So I hope this helps, and I guess good luck on the test.